Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome all of you to this press conference. My name is Ababa Teferi. I am an executive member of HEBER. HEBER is Ethio Multinational Federalist Force Support Group. HEBER, Ethio Hebra Biheraዊ Federalistoች ድጋፍ ኃይል that organized this conference. HEBER's support group is organized by members of all Ethiopian nations and nationalities to support multinational federalist movement in Ethiopia and to help Ethiopia to promote peace and stability by struggling anti-peace and anti-unity elements in all aspects, particularly to expose what Abiy Ahmed and his anti-democracy and anti-nations and nationalities allies are doing against the interests of the Ethiopians. We will have two segments, the first one in English and the second one in Amharic. We'll have two presenters. We'll have question and answer sessions. Please write your answers on the chat screen. And finally, we'll close our press conference by delivering HEBER statement on current situation. Let me introduce you the presenters. President of HEBER is Gail Gabisa, PhD, History, Michigan State. Is Professor of History at the Catherine University. He is the author of Leaf of Allah, Cat and the Transformation of Agriculture in Hararge, Ethiopia, 1875 to 1991, and sole editor of Contested Terrain Essays on Oromo Studies, Ethiopians' Discourses and Politically Engaged Scholarship, and Taking the Place of Food, CAT in Ethiopia. He has published articles in international journals, including Journal of Ethnopharmacology, Substance Use and Misuse, Northeast African Studies Quarterly, and Journal of Oromo Studies. He has also published several book chapters, encyclopedia, articles, and entries, review, essays, and book reviews. He is a translator and editor of Evangelical Faith Movement in Ethiopia, the origins and establishment of the Ethiopian Evangelical Church, and the former editor of Northeast African Studies and current editor of the Journal of Oromo Studies. His research focuses on investigating and understanding chains of historical, political, and economic forces that shape global discourses on human security, sustainability in development, and social movements. While the specific geographic research interest is the Horn of Africa, with connections across the Red Sea to the Arabian Peninsula, his research has broader implications for exploring people's response to incentive markets or ideas, decision-making processes based on indigenous knowledge, cropping pattern of worship practices, and the resultant political, cultural, and socio-economic transformation, state society of church-society relations. He teaches courses on leadership, sustainable development, and contemporary issues in Africa and the Middle East. He has taught at universities in Ethiopia, China, Japan, and Sweden. Gail Gabisa is a leading expert and political commentator on Ethiopian politics. He has appeared on international and national conferences and media outlets to explain political developments in Ethiopia. He has been a visiting professor at the Center for Human Rights at Addis Ababa University, who has taught human rights lawyers, activists, and governmental officials. He is an influential public intellectual who uses his position in the academia to serve as human rights advocate for the Oromo and other people of Ethiopia. He has been a leading advocate of politically engaged scholarship and a leading public intellectual on Oromo issues. He served twice as the president of the Oromo Studies Association an international scholarly organization dedicated to the production and dissemination of knowledge about the Oromo people. He sought after for his expertise on Ethiopian and Oromo issues. His political commentaries regularly appear in Addis Standard, the influential English monthly magazine in Ethiopia, and international magazines including the National Geographic, La Liberation, The Economist, the Jacobin, and other outlets. His articles are widely read by Ethiopia observers seeking authoritative explanation on Ethiopian political developments. He will present on the current situation of Ethiopia. The second presenter is Vice President of Heber, Mr. Mulu Seneg. The first law degree from Ethiopia, Master of Laws in International Law from India, Master of Laws on Law and Governmental from USA. He will explain Heber's goals and structures. I am honored to invite President Professor Hizkel Gabisa to start his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ababa Tafari. That was a generous introduction. Much more than I have done in my life. I didn't know that it was taking about 10 minutes, but thanks for that generous introduction. And everybody else, people from the media and my colleagues in the Heber Ethiopian Multinational Federalist Support Force, thanks for showing up. I will just go into explaining why we are here and why the Ethiopian Multinational Federalist Force was established. We are organized as Heber, the Ethiopian Multinational Federalist Force Support Force, because we understand that Ethiopia is currently in a teetering on the verge of state collapse. Until today, the idea that the Ethiopian state could collapse was deemed in the abstract. No longer. Today, the world is watching Ethiopia descending into a political quagmire after 2 years of state-sanctioned violence, repression, murder against ongoing popular protests, opposing the rise of autocracy and the imposition of an expansionist totalitarian oligarchy as Ethiopia's rulers. This is not an overly alarmist assessment of some detached diaspora analysts like me. It's the same sentiment was expressed by Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali on several occasions. And one time he has publicly stated in front of the Ethiopian parliament that the nationalist political factions in Ethiopia could push Ethiopia into a situation similar to what had prevailed in Somalia for 26 years. State collapse, he said, is inevitable, but his goal in acknowledging this fact was not an acknowledgement of a palpable fact that the world is watching, but a declaration that he is the only one preventing that from happening. I think the country was precisely at the same point in 1991 when a military dictatorship was toppled and a political settlement was reached among rebel forces that actually toppled the military's government and assembled all forces in Ethiopia that were available for representation at the time. And after 3 decades of a civil war, the country adopted a constitution in 1995. And two decades after its adoption, Ethiopia's multinational federalism had started to address the question, the major question in Ethiopia's political history, the demand for national self-government. Because the constitution endorses the right of nations and nationalities in Ethiopia to self-determination and self-rule within the framework of a federalist, a federal multinational system. 2 years ago, it seemed that we were in a situation where there is no political party that advocated secessionism or proposed dismantling the federal structure. 2 years ago, Ethiopia was an example of a multinational federation that had worked, decreasing rather than increasing conflict through a successful reorganization of states and self-governing states, sovereign states, along linguistic lines and settlement patterns. This was, as I said, was a success, was considered a success, but it had its own shortcomings, that it was not fully democratic. A demand 2 years ago was that the success would be celebrated, the shortcomings would be strengthened, and that Ethiopia would be a democratic, federalist, multinational state. But despite its success, for the first time in more than 24 years, the Ethiopian constitution and the multinational federation now have come under ferocious assault. Advocates of the righteousness of the eternal yesterday, those who believe that Ethiopia's best days are in the past, have captured state power in Addis Ababa and subjected to unprecedented repression and persecution those forces in Ethiopia that believe that Ethiopia can become a prosperous nation, a prosperous state, at peace with itself and with its neighbors, only if, and I stress this, and only if its own political order is based on respect for the Constitution, respect for the multinational system, and democratic participation. But sadly, after over 2 years, the promise of reform and a democratic dispensation had raised hope. The worst features of Ethiopian political culture have returned with vengeance. Mass arrests, lengthy detention without trial, without charge, and infringement on citizens' rights are commonplace. Opposition political party leaders and their supporters are subjected to illegal detention, physical beating, torture, and extrajudicial execution. The incumbent, which is not really an incumbent because at this point in time it is simply a usurper that had unconstitutionally seized power, does more. Innocent people are subjected to scorched earth strategies, such as burning homes, collective punishment, such as internet and phone blockade, to hide violent crimes perpetrated by government security forces, and guilt by association, killing parents and abducting siblings of individuals who allegedly had joined rebel ranks. Now, these atrocities have been an aspect of daily life in the Oromia regional states for the last 2 years. A target in that region is basically any and all Oromo who support the political settlement of 1991, which means a multinational constitution and a federal arrangement that is based on national characteristics and self-rule within that framework. Any and all that support this are now targeted as enemies of the state. The same is happening in the Southern Nations and Nationalities region, where nations who demanded their constitutional right to self-rule have also been subjected to all equally heinous repression just for demanding their constitutionally enshrined rights. And currently, the incumbent party, the usurper, the political party known as the Prosperity Party, at the helm of the Ethiopian state, has declared an all-out war on the Tigray region, a member of the Ethiopian Federation, just for holding elections and insisting that the Constitution be respected. And shamelessly, this war is declared in conjunction with the Eritrean government, especially the Eritrean leader, who forged an unholy alliance with the Ethiopian Prime Minister. The Ethiopian Prime Minister, who is supposedly reformist, is now waging war with the Eritrean leader, a person widely acknowledged as a scourge or the force of evil and brutality in the entire Horn of Africa region. Now, 30 years after a dictatorship was defeated in 1991, and Ethiopia had reached a political settlement, a concordat was reached. The Ethiopian leader, the incumbent prime minister, who 2 years ago was celebrated as a reformist and a peacemaker, a Nobel Peace Laureate at that, has decided to unleash death and mayhem on his own people once again. So we're back where we were 30 years ago. By all measures, looked at it from any angle, the current war in the north and in the south is a senseless war. The war with Eritrea about 25 years ago was considered by the entire world as a senseless war, a war that has no meaning, that has no end, that has no political goal. The war that has gone on in the Oromia region and in the southern region, it was senseless as well. This war that was declared against the regional state of Tigray in other regions in Ethiopia, it will end one way or the other. It will end as a political settlement or with the defeat of one side. There is no war that will go on forever. But the future of Pax Ethiopica, the future of peace in Ethiopia, is only one. There is only one way, and that is a constitutional, multinational, democratic federation. Any other option, the least of which is war, is doomed to fail. And this adventure by the Ethiopian Prime Minister will also fail. There is no doubt about that. So this is why we formed this movement, the Ethiopian Multinational Federalist Forces. We formed it for Ethiopia's salvation. We formed it for Ethiopia's peace and for stability in the entire Horn of Africa region. Beginning today, we'll get to work. We will start our work. And in this, we will support forces that struggle for a political order, as I indicated before, based on respect for the Constitution and the political settlement of 1991, the multinational federal system, and a democratic participation of all Ethiopian citizens. We will support a return to a path to a democratic transition. We will support the right of Ethiopia's nations in their quest for self-rule within the Ethiopian Federation. We will work to strengthen solidarity between multinational forces. We will do all we can to make sure that the world knows about our cause and the atrocities that are perpetrated by a militarist junta that had by accident history found itself at the helm of the Ethiopian state. So we know we will succeed because our cause is just. And we will know we will succeed because nearly 90% of Ethiopia's population support this cause. We'll work for this effort, and we will begin our work today. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Scale. You explained it very well. We appreciate it. The next presenter will be Ato Mulu Sanda.
Thank you, Ms. Awa, the moderator. I wish to thank you for all the introductory statements. And thank you, Professor Scale, for explaining and presenting the current Ethiopian situation, which will be clear not only to Ethiopians, but to the whole world. I want to say something about how are we organized and why are we organized. As it was said before, we all, nations and nationalities in Ethiopia, were sustaining a lot of problems by the current government in Ethiopia. Of course, now it's not a legal government, by the ex-government of Ethiopia. Now it doesn't have any legality. If you go to the nations and nationalities and see what's happening there, it is really ridiculous. If you go to Gambela, if you go to Benishangul, if you go to Kamant, if you go to Sidama, you can see a lot of hue and cry by many citizens. The Abiy Ahmed government and his armed forces were killing hundreds, if not thousands, imprisoning, and again creating a lot of internal displacement in the peasant society, which has never been seen in Ethiopia. Particularly if you go to Oromia nation, they have been, especially the western part of Oromia, they have been sustaining a lot of inhuman treatments. People were killed. The government banned all telephone, internet services, and it banned also their elected government, the state government officials, and put his own mercenaries, you can call them. And then he blocked not even a single information to leak from Oromia. And he was killing hundreds and thousands of people in Oromia by prohibiting the world from getting a single information from that area. So people everywhere, like I mentioned earlier, just a few examples, in Oromia, in Kamant, in Benishangul, in Sidama, people were crying here and there. We, citizens of those nations and nationalists who are living abroad, were closely following the situation. So we started to think of how are we going to tackle this issue? And also we observed the government was destroying the federal structure. It couldn't be loyal to the constitution. Instead, he imprisoned all the political leaders of the country. And the nations and nationals who were hoping the federal system will flourish started to lose their hope because all their political leaders were thrown into prison. So we started thinking, how are we going to tackle such issue? We are residing abroad. What type of linkage can we do to help our people back home? So starting from August, we started to discuss on the issue, on coming together and forming a certain association or a certain force as how to help the federal movement, the multinational federal movement inside Ethiopia. And then after continuous discussions, we came to have our own bylaw, and we ratified that bylaw. And now we established Ethio Multi-Federal Forces Support Group. This group is established from almost all nations and nationalities in Ethiopia. members of this force are people from Oromia, from Tigray, from Amhara, from Timant, from Wolaita, from Hadia, Sidama, Kambata, Somalia, Afar, Benshangul, Gambela, and Silte. So you can see this is a little Ethiopia. All these people came together. We don't have hatred. We don't hate each other. We are brothers and sisters. We are all Ethiopians. We want democratic state. We want federal type of government. We respect Ethiopian constitution. So what the government is lacking back home is cannot bring all the people together. It considers nations and nationals, thinking with the rights and administration of nations and nationals is the source for the problem in the country. That is not. It has never been, and it will not be. We believe we are members of our nations and nationalities, but we are Ethiopians too. He doesn't want to hear this. Abiy government and his allies, the anti-democratic forces who are backing Abiy Ahmed. Now, before the country becomes disintegrated, we decided to form this association or this force to help the Federalists in Ethiopia in all aspects, For this purpose, we adopted our bylaw with clear goals of promoting peace in the country, of promoting stability in the country, of recognizing and accepting the rights and liberties of all nations and nationalities, to have their own administration, to respect the federal system. These are parts of our goals. We all oppose the undemocratic activity Abiy Ahmed and his allies are doing against our people. Now we can clearly see Abiy Ahmed and his allies have declared war against Tigray. And the worst part of it is, it's not him that is in the front line. The poor peasants of Amhara are subjected to be the soldiers who pay their lives in the front line. So people from Amhara and Tigray are subjected to kill each other because of this government. A lot of Ethiopians are now, especially from the Tigray region, from the Tigray nation, are put into prison, suspended from their jobs, even in the central parts of Ethiopia. People who reside in Addis Ababa, in the south, in the east, and even in the west. The government is collecting these Tigrinya speakers from all aspects of work and putting them in concentration camps, and some of them in prison. So they are losing their jobs. Imagine, all these people are having family members. They have children, they have family. Regardless, is throwing them into prison. Why? Because they belong to Tigray region. Because they are Tigray ethnic origin, nothing else. But the cover that they are using is, they say they are members of TPLF. And they also come with a cover saying, we have got some suspicious activities, ammunitions. This is ridiculous. His undemocratic allies are subjecting the country or pushing the country into a civil war. Now, I believe there is a civil war in the country. That's what it is. Oromo people are fighting against the government. Tigray people are fighting against the government. The Kamant, the Sidama, everywhere. The degrees and the type of fight might be different, but people are fighting for their freedoms. So the motto of our force, HIBR, is to assist, help the multinational movement in Ethiopia. We believe peaceful struggle for civil liberties is the important part. And we're trying to help this civil and peaceful movement in the country. And we believe all Ethiopians will line up with HIBR and promote it so that we can promote the real democracy, the real federalism, and the real unity of the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulu. So I just want to remind that people could type their email and type their contact information for future contacts. I thank you. And the next segment is our question and answers. All right. Hakfan Media, you can go ahead and ask questions.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. My question is for Professor Scale. For people that are not familiar with this forum, what are the high-level details that you want people to know at this time? The second one is, it should be the first one, the mission. It was explained so rightly so, but briefly, what is the mission and goal of this forum in the United States or as a diaspora? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Professor, would you like to answer that, or would you like me to get some more questions?
I can answer it. I can wait.
Thank you.
Sure. As far as detail is concerned, this is an announcement of its establishment, the establishment of this movement. In the coming days, we will have a website and other social media platforms to make available the constituting documents and other documents that would explain the mission, the vision, the values, and objectives of the organization. But in general, to address your second question about the mission, what we're doing is a support force. We're not in the country. We believe that there are Federalist forces in the country. People who believe, as I was saying in my earlier remark, that the Ethiopian political scene is basically divided into two. I thought that in 1991, we had a settlement based on the history of 30 years of nationalist struggle, history of war and civil war, famine, and other human tragedies. We thought that the settlement had worked. So what we're trying to do is to try to help the political forces in the country that support the political settlement or the Peace Concordat of 1991 that is based on a tripod, as I was saying in my remark, that we're constitutionalists. We believe that the country is constituted as a political and economic community based on the Constitution of 1995. Other than that, the cultural, social, and other forces that would probably hold a nation together are not strong enough to support Ethiopia remaining intact. We also believe that the unitarist, autocratic, assimilationist system doesn't work. It doesn't work because we've tried it before. So we believe that this settlement, the 1991 settlement, is the basis for the country to come together. The multinational framework for self-rule and governance is also a bedrock principle. But all do not matter if the country is not democratized. And so we believe that democratic participation would be the linchpin for bringing the Ethiopian nations and nationalities together, and then hold them together and build the country or the political and economic community that the Constitution envisioned. So we support all those forces with research, with all our resources, intellectual resources, financial resources. These forces that are in the country that are today paying a very high price, dearly with their lives, for a cause that is worth dying for. We will support them because there is only one way in Ethiopia. Either Ethiopia becomes democratic and respects the rights of nations to self-rule, or Ethiopia will no longer be a community within the framework of nations. So we believe earnestly that the only way that Ethiopia could remain together, that Ethiopians could remain together and strengthen the bonds that tie them together, is the willing, that it remains the federation of the willing. That's our mission. That is our primary mission. Other than that, we'll also struggle as citizens, not just as an organization, as citizens of Ethiopia, to end the current rise, or to stop this inexorable rise of the autocratic, assimilationist, unitarist tendency. It's not worked for Ethiopia. It will not work for Ethiopia. So we will, on the one hand, be the support force that the political forces in the country need, but in our own way also, we will struggle to end the nightmare that had befallen Ethiopia today, that is now descended to an internecine warfare, a senseless war between fraternal peoples. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, may I come in, Ababa, with some few supplements?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, as Professor Scale has clearly stated it, if I'm going to put them into combined missions, we can put them like a short-term mission and the long-term mission. In the short term, we will be working to organize Ethiopians all over in the world to help us stop the war. Because the effect of war, we Ethiopians know what it is. And we don't know how it's going to end up. And we don't know what it is going to devastate. It will take lots of lives. So far, we have seen thousands of immigrants fleeing the country into Sudan and other parts of Ethiopia. People are killing each other. We're already in a civil war. So we need to stop this war. No one will benefit from this war. And brothers and sisters are in the war. They are fighting each other. We're not fighting against foreign aggressors. Of course, Isaias Afwerki is behind Abiy Ahmed and is trying to violate the country's sovereign power. So in the shorter term, we're trying to work hard to stop the war. We'll contact diplomats, we'll contact the international community, we'll discuss with fellow Ethiopians to stop the war, as nobody benefits from the war. The second point in relation with this is, we want our brothers and sisters who are thrown into prison, we want them to be released. We have hundreds and thousands of political leaders and figures who are thrown in prison because of their political opinion, because they belong to certain political parties, because they belong to certain ethnic groups. So we're going to be voice for these voiceless people, voice for these voiceless leaders. And the third point in relation with this is we want to keep our sovereignty. Abiy Ahmed is violating the sovereignty of the country in relation with Isaias Afwerki. We want Isaias Afwerki and his troops to leave Ethiopia, because this will create another situation. If Abiy Ahmed is coming with one foreign government, and then the other oppositions can also come with another foreign government, that will be the ridiculous part of the war. So we don't want this to happen in our country. So Isaias Afwerki and his troops have to leave Ethiopia soon. And we don't want the government to cross the borders of Ethiopia. So we will work this with fellow Ethiopians and with the help of the international community to stop any violation of our sovereignty. And then further that on our long run terms, we want to work, strengthen our constitution. If there are articles that needs an amendment, they can be amended legally. The constitution has its own legal procedures as how to amend the constitution. We have to remain a constitutional country. We have to remain a federalist country, multinational federalist country. So we're going to work on promoting these values of the country. When we do this, of course, there are opposition groups who doesn't want to see this constitutional order in the country. There are undemocratic elements who want to destroy the federal system in the country. So we'll be facing these people. Thank you.
My question is, first of all, I would like to say thank you, Ababa, Professor, and our President Mulu Fantaun. And now my question goes to Vice President Mulu Fantaun on his presentation about Heber. I might have missed some points, but I would like to reiterate some of the in the form of question. And when he says, Mulu, when you say Heber is comprised of different nations and nationalities, how many of them do you have them? Can you name some? That's my first question. And the second one is, when did you start establishing this institution? I know institution establishment takes time. And is it just because of the war currently we have here, or did you start it earlier than that? And I would like to reiterate on these two questions. Thank you.
Yes, I have tried to enumerate the member nationalities in this Heber force. To just repeat them, there are members from Oromia, from Tigray, from Amhara, from Kamant, from Walaita, from Hadia, from Sidama, Kambata, Somalia, Afar, Benshangul, Gambella, and Silte. That's why we say this is Little Ethiopia. It represents almost all. Of course, there are nations and nationalities, we want them to join us, but so far, these are the members of the movement, of this force of Heber. And then to go to the second question, well, as I have earlier indicated it, we, all of us, were thinking of how are we going to tackle with the problems Abiy Ahmed is creating in our nations and nationalities. The command people were gathering themselves and looking on solutions. The Tigray people were looking on same solution. Oromo people were also gathering in with their mates and then seeking for solution, how they do it. But finally, we came together and then said, separately, we cannot solve this problem. We have to come, unite our hands together and fight peacefully, legally, the aims that our people have to attain. So we started this movement, well, you can say maybe 2-3 years before, every nation and nationality was working on separately. But to come together, it might be around 4 or 5 months before we started coming together. It started with a group of people. 6 people started it from different nations and nationals. They sit together, they discuss on how to solve this problem, and they agreed they have to come with all Ethiopians, nations and nationalities. And then many nationalities started to join this movement. And finally, November 8th, we adopted our bylaw and we come up with HIBR, Ethio Multinational Force Support Group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulu. You might have forgotten one member of, which is Ago. I didn't hear you, including Ago. So Ago also is one of the members.
I am sorry, Ababa. You are absolutely right. Ago is also, and I feel sorry for getting this. Ago is also a member. We have many members from Ago community.
Thank you.
It's a big list, so sorry to forget.
Thank you. So unless there is another question, I think we'll go to the next segment, which is we're going to conduct if there is an Amharic now. So I will go to the next in Amharic. So this concluded our English portion of it. So አሁን እንግዲህ ወደ አማርኛው እየተላለፈን ነው። እንደገና እንግዲህ አላስተዋወቅም የተዋወቀና እዚህ የቀጠለ ስለሆነ በአማርኛ አሁን ከመጨረሳችን በፊት ሐሳቦች ምናምን ካላችሁ አንድ ሁለት ሰዎችን እድል እሰጣለሁ። ጥያቄዎችም እንዲሁ በአማርኛ ካለ እድል እሰጣለሁ። ከዛ በኋላ የመጨረሻችን ሊሆን የሚችለው ምንድነው አንበን እንዘጋለን ማለት ነው። እና ከዚህ ውስጥ ሐሳብ እና ጥያቄዎች ካሏችሁ ወይም በአማርኛ ክፍል መናገር የምትፈልጉ መናገር የምትፈልጉ ካላችሁ እንድትናገሩ እድል እሰጣለሁ።
እንግዲህ ኢትዮጵያ ህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌደራሊስት ኃይል የሚለው የድጋፍ ኃይል የሚለው የተቋቋመበት ምክንያት የሀገር የኢትዮጵያ ሁኔታ እጅግ ስላሳሰበን ነው። አሁን ምናልባት ከዚህ በፊት የኢትዮጵያ ሀገረ መንግስት አደጋ አጋጥሞታል፣ በብዙ ጊዜ አደጋ አጋጥሞታል። በተለይም ደግሞ በራሱ ላይ የመውደቅ አደጋ አጋጥሞታል ይባል ነበር። በተለያየ የፖለቲካ ሽግግር ጊዜያት እነዚህ አደጋዎች እንዳዣበቡ እናውቃለን። ከዚህ በፊት ምናልባት በሀሳብ ደረጃ ነው ይህንን ስናስበው የነበረው። አሁን ግን በቀጥታ በአይናችን እያየነው ያለነው የዓለም ህዝብ እየተመለከተው የኢትዮጵያ መንግስት ወይም ሀገረ መንግስቱ ለመውደቅ እና በራሱ ላይ ለመውደቅ እየተንገዳገደ መሆኑን ነው። ሊወጣ የማይችልበት ሀገረ መንግስቱ መሪዎች በተለይም ደግሞ የአሁኑ የአስተዳደሩ መሪዎች ሀገሪቷን ልትወጣበት የማትችል አዘቅት ውስጥ እየከተቱ ነው። የአምባገነንነት የግለሰብ አምባገነንነት በከፍተኛ ፍጥነት ለመመስረት ሩጫ እየተደረገ ነው። እንዲሁም ደግሞ በአገሩ ውስጥ ይሄ የመሬት ተስፋፊነት እና እንዲሁም የጠቅልሎ ጨፍጫፊነት ወይም ጠቅልሎ ገዥነት ልምድ ያላቸው ወገኖች ስልጣኑን ከተቆጣጠሩ በኋላ አገሪቷን ወደማያስፈልግ እንቅስቃሴ እየመሩ መኖሩ ግልጽ ነው። ይሄ የኢትዮጵያ ሀገረ መንግስቱ ወይም ደግሞ የኢትዮጵያ መንግስት ሊባል የሚችለው መንግስቱ ሊወድቅ ይችላል የሚለው እኛ ብቻ የምንለው ሳይሆን ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትሩን በተለያየ ጊዜ ኢትዮጵያ አትፈርስም፣ ኢትዮጵያ ልትፈርስ አትችልም፣ እኛ እያለን አትፈርስም የሚል ንግግር ያደርጋሉ። አንዳንድ ጊዜ ደግሞ አልፈው ከሶማሌ ጋር የሚያመሳስሉበትን ጊዜ አለ። ይህ እንግዲህ ያው እኔ ከሌለው ኢትዮጵያ ትፈርሳለች የሚለውን ነገር ነው ለመናገር የሚፈልጉት። ይሄ አለ። አንድ መሰረታዊ ነገር እዚህ ላይ መታወቅ ያለበት እኔ ቅድምም ስናገረው እንደነበረው የኢትዮጵያ ችግሮች ብዙ ናቸው። ታሪካዊ ችግሮች አሉ፣ መሰረታዊ ችግሮች አሉ፣ ጊዜያዊ ችግሮች አሉ። እነዚህን ለመፍታት በፈረንጅ አቆጣጠር በ1991 ወይም በኢትዮጵያ አቆጣጠር በ1983 ከሶስት አስርተ ዓመት ብዙ ነፍስ የጠፋበት፣ ብዙ ደም የፈሰሰበት፣ ብዙ አጥንት የተከሰከሰበት አገሪቷም ደግሞ ልትፈርስ በደረሰችበት ሰዓት የኢትዮጵያ የፖለቲካ ኃይሎች ተሰብስበው አንድ የስምምነት ላይ ነው የደረሱት። የፖለቲካ ሴትልመንት ነው ለማለት የሚቻል በሀገሪቷ ውስጥ ያሉትን ትልልቅ ጥያቄዎች ሙሉ በሙሉ በአንድ ጊዜ ለመመለስ እንዲቻል የሆነ የሰላም ኮንኮርዳት ነው የተደረገው። በእነዚህ ምክንያት ነው ኢትዮጵያ ለ30 ዓመት በተለያየ ችግሮች ኖራት እየቀጠለች፣ ነገር ግን በአንድ ላይ ለመቆየት በተለያዩ ማህበረሰባት መካከልም በአንድ ፌዴሬሽን ውስጥ በፈቃደኝነታቸው የገቡ ብሔሮች እና ብሔረሰቦች የገነባት ኢትዮጵያ ትገነባለች የሚለው ከነ ችግሩ ከነ ዴሞክራሲያዊ ደፍስቱ ከሌሎች ችግሮቹ ጋር ወደዛ አቅጣጫ ትሄዳለች ነው ታስቦ የነበረው። ከሁሉ በላይ ግን ወደ ጦርነት ትመለሳለች የሚል ሀሳብ አልነበረም። ምናልባት የውስጥ የፖለቲካ ችግሮች ሊኖሩ ይችላሉ፣ እነዚህ ግን በጊዜና በንግግር ይፈታሉ የሚለው ነበረ። ከ2 ዓመት በፊት ለውጥ በተደረገበት ጊዜ እነዚህ ተስፋዎች ይለመልማሉ፣ የነበሩት ጉድለቶች ይሟላሉ። ከዛም ኢትዮጵያ ወደ ብልጽግናና ወደ ሰላም ጎዳና ትቀጥላለች። በውስጧ ያሉት ብሔር ብሔረሰቦች ህገ መንግስቱ የሚሰጣቸው መብት ተረጋግጦላቸው በዚህ ውስጥ ይቀጥላሉ። ኢትዮጵያም አንድ የኢኮኖሚና የፖለቲካ ማህበረሰብ ሆና ራሷን እየገነባች ትቀጥላለች የሚል ተስፋ ነው የነበረው። እንዲያውም የዛሬ 2 ዓመት የኢትዮጵያ ህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌዴሬሽን የሚታወቀው የነበረው ከዓለም ውስጥ ካሉ ህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌዴሬሽኖች ውስጥ ስራ ላይ ውሎ ከሰራ ጦርነትን ወይንም ደግሞ ግጭትን ሊያስወግድ የቻለ ፌዴሬሽን ነው ተብሎ ከሚታመኑት ውስጥ አንዱ ነው የነበረው። አሁን ያ እውነት አይደለም። የኢትዮጵያን ፌዴሬሽን ለማጥፋት ከፍተኛ የርብርቦች እየተካሄደ ነው። የኢትዮጵያን ያ የፖለቲካ ሴትልመንት ነው የሚለው የህገ መንግስቱን ለማጥፋት ብዙ ሽርጉድ እየተደረገ ነው። እንዲሁም ደግሞ ባለፉት የኢትዮጵያ የመንግስታት ጊዜ ሲደረጉ የነበሩ የመብት ጥሰቶች፣ የሰብአዊ መብት ጥሰቶች፣ የዴሞክራሲያዊ መብት ጥሰቶች እጅግ በሚያስከፋ ሁኔታ ነው እየተጣሱ የሚገኙት። ከሁሉም በላይ ደግሞ አሁን ያለው ግድያ፣ አሁን እኛ እዚህ እየተነጋገርን በዚህ ደቂቃ ላይ የሚደረገው ግድያ፣ የሚደረገው እስራት ከዚህ በፊት በኢትዮጵያ ታሪክ ውስጥ ታይቶ የማይታወቅ ነው። ለዚህ አምባገነንም አይነት አለው። አምባገነንነትም ከአንዱ ከሌላው የተለያየ ነው። የአሁኑ ግን የኢትዮጵያ አምባገነንነት ፈጽሞ ጠቅላይ፣ ፈጽሞ ጨፍላቂ፣ ርህራሄን የማያውቅ፣ የሰውን መብት የማያውቅ፣ ሰውነትም የሌለው አይነት ስለሆነ እጅግ አደገኛ ሁኔታ ላይ ስለምትገኝ ነው ይቺ ሀገር። በእኛ እምነት ይህንን ላሳጥሮ ሌላው ሁሉ ስለሚያውቀው በእኛ ይህንን ንቅናቄ በፈጠርነው ግምት ኢትዮጵያ ወደፊት የምትቀጥል ከሆነ የብሔር ብሔረሰቦቿን መብት ተከብረው በፈቃደኝነታቸው የሚኖሩበት በእኩልነት፣ በነፃነት፣ በፍትህና የሰው ልጅ ስብዕና ሰብአዊ መብት ተከብረው የሚኖርበት ካልሆነች እነዚህ ደግሞ መብቶች የሚገለጹት በህገ መንግስታዊ ስርዓት እና በህገ መንግስቱ መሰረት እንዲሁም የህዝብ ዴሞክራሲያዊ ተሳትፎ ካልበዛ በስተቀር አይቻልም ነው። ሌላ መንገድ የለም። ለዚህ ምክንያት በሀገር ውስጥ ላሉ የፖለቲካ ኃይሎች ይህንን የሚደግፉ እነዚህን 3 የመቋሚያ እግር ያላቸውን ሁኔታዎች የኢትዮጵያን ህገ መንግስት፣ የህገ መንግስታዊውን ስርዓት፣ ያ ማለት የህብረ ብሔራዊ ስርዓቱን ነው፣ የህዝብ ተሳትፎ፣ ዴሞክራሲያዊ ተሳትፎ ከሌለ እቺ ሀገር ልትቀጥል አትችልም። አሁን ይሄ አብስትራክት አይደለም። ቅድም እንዳልኩት አሁን በስራ በግጭት ላይ ነው ሀገሪቷ ያለችው። በሙሉ ጦርነት ውስጥ ነው ያለው። ይሄንን ለመመለስ የሚቻለውን ሁሉ ለማድረግ ካልተደራጀን በስተቀር ማድረግ አንችልም ስላለን በድርጅት ደረጃ ድጋፍ ለመስጠት ነው የምንሄደው። አንዳንድ ጊዜ ተልእኮአችንና ጥያቄዎቻችንን አንድ ላይ እናደርጋለን። ተልእኮአችን አንድ ነው። ተልእኮአችን አሁን ያልኩት መንገድ ብቻ ነው ለኢትዮጵያ የሚያዋጣው የሚል ነው። በዛ ውስጥ ብዙ አይነት ጥያቄዎች ሊኖሩ ይችላሉ። ለእኛም ለፖለቲካ ኃይሎቹም ጥያቄዎች አሉ። ግን አንድ ዲማንድ ማለት ተልእኮ አይደለም። ተልእኮአችን ግን በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ በህዝቦቿ ፈቃድ የተመሰረተ በኢትዮጵያ በህዝቦቿ ፈቃድ ላይ የተመሰረተች ዴሞክራሲያዊት ፌዴራላዊት ህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌዴሬሽን ካልሆነ በስተቀር ሌላው መንገድ ሁሉ አያዋጣም ብለን ስለምናምን ይሄንን ነው ከግብ ለማድረስ የምንፈልገው። ይሄንን ከግብ ለማድረስ እንቅፋት አለ። አሁን የታወቀ ነገር ነው። እንቅፋቱ በዛ ጎዳና እንዳንሄድ ወደኋላ ሊመልስ የሚፈልግ ቡድን አለ። ያንን ቡድን መፋለም እንፋለማለን። የፖለቲካ ጥያቄዎቻችን እንዲመለሱ እናደርጋለን። ተልእኳችን ግን ለኢትዮጵያ የሚበጀው አንድ መንገድ ብቻ ነውና ያንን እውን ለማድረግ እንታገላለን። ይሄንን እንግዲህ ከዝርዝሩን ከዌብሳይትም ከሌሎች ከምናሰራጫቸው ጽሁፎችም ማግኘት ይቻላል። ዋናው ተልእኳችን ግን አሁን ያልኩት ነው። ወደዛ ጎዳና ስንሄድ መጥረግ ያለብን ብዙ ነገር አለ፣ ማስወገድ ያለብን ብዙ ነገር አለ። እሱንም ለማድረግ በሙሉ ኃይል እና በሙሉ ጉልበታችን እንሄድበታለን።
ወደ መጨረሻ እየሄድን ነው። የኢትዮጵያ ህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌዴራሊስቶች የድጋፍ ኃይል የኢትዮጵያን ወቅታዊ ሁኔታን አስመልክቶ የወጣውን የአቋም መግለጫ በአቶ ደንቦባ ናቲ ይነበብልናል እና አቶ ደንቦባ ካሉ።
መልካም፣ አመሰግናለሁ። እንግዲህ የተሰጠኝ ኃላፊነት ማንበቡ ነው እና አነባለሁ። የኢትዮጵያ ህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌዴራሊስቶች የድጋፍ ኃይል Ethiopian Multinational Federalist Support Force ብሎ ነው እንግዲህ የተጻፈውና አቋም መግለጫውን ነው የማነበው። አሁን ከሰላማዊና ዲሞክራሲያዊ የፖለቲካ መፍትሄ ውጪ ኃይል መፍትሄ አይሆንም ነው ብለው አቅጣጫው ዋናው የብሔር ብሔረሰቦች አገር የሆነችውን ኢትዮጵያ ህዝቦቿ የራሳቸውን እድል በራስ የመወሰን መብት የሚረጋገጥላቸውን ህገ መንግስት በመሻር ህገወጡ የአብይ አህመድ ቡድን የህዝቦች የትግል ውጤት የሆነውን የህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌዴራሊስት ስርዓተ መንግስት በመናድ በመላው ሀገሪቱ የእርስ በርስ ጦርነት እንዲቀጣጠል አድርጓል። አንድን ብሔር ከሌላው፣ አንዱን ክልል ከሌላኛው በማጋጨት በጦርነት ጭምር እንዲፈላለጉ በመቀስቀስና በማነሳሳት እጅግ ብዙ ደም እንዲፈስ አድርጓል። በተለይም በኦሮሞና በቅማንት፣ በቤንሻንጉል ጉሙዝ፣ ወላይታ፣ ሲዳማ፣ አፋርና ሌሎች ብሔረሰቦች ላይ የዘር ማጥፋት ሊባል የሚችል ጅምላ ግድያዎችን አካሂዷል። የአማራ ክልል በመንግስት የሚደገፉ ታጣቂዎች ባደረሱት ጥቃት ህፃናት ያለ እናት፣ ሽማግሌዎችን ያለ ጧሪ ከአንድ የቅማንት ቤተሰብ ብቻ 5 ወጣቶች ሲገደሉ ወንጀለኞች እንዳይጠየቁ በማድረግ ተባባሪነቱን አስመስክሯል። ኢትዮጵያውያን በህይወት ዘመናቸው እንዲህ አይነት መጠነ ሰፊ የሆነ ደም መፋሰስና የጅምላ ግድያ አይቶ አያውቁም። በኦሮሞ ህዝብና የፖለቲካ መሪዎች ላይ ጦርነትና እስራት ላለፉት 2 ዓመታት ባለማቋረጥ አራምዷል። መብራትና የኢንተርኔት አገልግሎት በመዝጋት በጨለማ ያለ መገናኛ መስመር በአውሮፕላን ጭምር ህዝብን በግፍ ጨፍጭፏል። ከውጭ ኃይሎች በመመሳጠር የሴራ ግድያ በኢንጂነር ስመኘው በቀለ፣ በጀነራል ሰዓረ መኮንን የሀገር መከላከያ ኤታማዦር ሹምና ጀነራል ጋአዚ አበራ፣ በአማራ ክልል ርዕሰ መስተዳድር ዶክተር አምባቸው መኮንን እና የስራ ባልደረቦቻቸው፣ ቀጥሎም በሰኔ 2019 በአርቲስት ሃጫሉ ሁንዴሳ ተፈጽሟል። የመንግስትን ስልጣን ለሴራ ፖለቲካ በመጠቀም በተለያዩ የኦሮሞ የፖለቲካ መሪዎችና ድርጅቶች ግድያና የእስራት እንዲሁም ንብረት ላይ ከፍተኛ ጉዳት አድርሷል። እየፈጸማቸው ያለውን ወንጀሎችና የሀገር ክህደት ህወሓትና ኦነግ ያሰለጠኗቸው ሰርጎ ገቦች የፈጸሙ ድርጊት ነው እያለ ኢትዮጵያውያንን ለማታለልና ለመከፋፈል ብዙ የህዝብ ገንዘብ አባክኗል። በነፃ መስራት ጀምረው የነበሩ የመገናኛ ብዙሃን እንዲዘጉ ወይም በመንግስት ቁጥጥር ስር እንዲውሉ እንዲያዙ አድርጓል። ይህን የጥፋት ተልዕኮ ይዞ ስማልል የቆየው ህገወጥ ቡድን ትግራይን ለመቆጣጠር እና ህወሓትን ለማጥፋት ከውጪ ኃይል ጋር በመመሳጠር ላለፉት 2 ተኩል ተከታታይ ዓመታት ሲሰራ ቆይቷል። የአማራና የትግራይን ህዝቦች እርስ በርስ ጦርነት አስገብቷል። በቀጥታም ይሁን በተዘዋዋሪ መንገዶች እንዲዘጉ ለህዝብ ግንኙነት እንዲቋረጥ አድርጓል። ይህ ህገወጥ ቡድን የትግራይን ህዝብ ህገ መንግስቱን ተከትሎ የራስን እድል በራሱ ለመወሰን የሚያበቃው የክልል ምርጫ በማድረጉ ምክንያት የበጀት እገዳ አድርጎበታል። የፌደራል መንግስት ከክልሉ መንግስት ያለውን ሌሎች ግንኙነቶችን አቋርጧል። በቅርቡም በትግራይ ክልል ህዝቦች ተመርጦ ስልጣን የያዘውን የክልል መንግስት አፍርሻለሁ ብሏል። የኦሮሞ ብሔርተኛ መሪዎችና ሃጫሉ ሁንዴሳን የአማራን ክልል ለመቆጣጠር ዶክተር አምባቸው መኮንን መከላከያን ለመቆጣጠር ጀነራል ሰዓሬ በሴራ በመግደል እንዳደረገ ሁሉ የክልል አመራር አባላትን ለማጥፋት ትግራይን ለመቆጣጠር ጀነራል ሰዓሬን በሴራ በመግደል እንዳደረገ ሁሉ የክልል አመራር አባላትን በማጥፋት ትግራይን ለመቆጣጠር በተመሳሳይ የሴራ ግድያ ቡድን አሰማርቷል። በመሆኑም ህዳር 3 ቀን 2020 ዓመተ ምህረት ልዩ ኃይልና መደበኛ የኢትዮጵያ መከላከያ ሰራዊት በማዘዝ በትግራይ ብሔራዊ ክልላዊ መንግስትና ህዝብ ላይ ግልጽ የእርስ በርስ ጦርነት አውጇል። የኢትዮጵያ መከላከያ ሰራዊት ኮማንድ ፖስት በመመደብ ክልሎችን አፈራርሷል። የህዳሴ ግድብን ከውጭ ኃይሎች ጋር በመመሳጠር አሳልፎ ሰጥቷል። በዚህም ኢትዮጵያ ከአፍሪካ አጋሮቿ ከኢጋድ የአፍሪካ ህብረትና በተለይም ስትራቴጂካዊ ወዳጇ ከሱዳን ጋር ከባድ የመነጣጠል ስራ ፈጽሟል። የአቋም መግለጫ የኢትዮጵያ ህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌደራሊዝም ድጋፍ ሰጪ ኃይሎች በሀገራችን ኢትዮጵያ የተከፈተውን የእርስ በርስ ጦርነትና ይህንን ጦርነት ተከትሎ ሊከሰት የሚችለውን የመበታተን አደጋ ለመታደግ የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብና የዓለም ማህበረሰብ ከጎናችን እንዲቆም የሚከተለውን የአቋም መግለጫ አውጥቷል። አንደኛ፣ ጦርነትን እናወግዛለን። የስልጣን ጥማቱን ለማርካት ብቻ ኃይልን እንደ አማራጭ መጠቀም አጥብቀን እንቃወማለን። ኃይልን እንደ ብቸኛ የፖለቲካ አማራጭ እየተጠቀመ ያለውን የህገወጡ የአብይ አህመድ ቡድን የጀመረውን ጦርነት በአስቸኳይ እንዲያቆም እናሳስባለን። የብረት ፖለቲካን እናወግዛለን። በትግራይ ህዝብና መንግስት ላይ የተሰነዘረውን ጦርነት አጥብቀን እናወግዛለን። የትግራይ ህዝብና መንግስት ለመብቱና ለህልውናው በሚያደርገው ትግል ሁሉም ብሔር ብሔረሰቦች ከጎኑ እንቆማለን። በኦሮሚያ፣ በሲዳማ፣ በቅማንት፣ በወላይታ፣ በቤንሻንጉል፣ አፋር፣ ሶማሊያና በሌሎችም አካባቢዎች እየተደረጉ ያሉትን ጦርነቶች እናወግዛለን። የውጭ ጣልቃ ገብነትን አጥብቀን እንቃወማለን። በሀገራችን የፖለቲካ ጉዳይ ጣልቃ የገቡ የውጭ ኃይሎች በተለይም ኢሳያስ አፈወርቂና ያሰማራቸው የጸጥታ ኃይሎች ከሀገራችን ኢትዮጵያ በአስቸኳይ ለቀው እንዲወጡ እናሳስባለን። አራተኛ፣ የኢትዮጵያ ህገ መንግስትና የህብረ ብሔራዊ ፌደራላዊ ስርዓት የኢትዮጵያ ብሔር ብሔረሰቦች አንድ የሚያደርግ ብቸኛ ምሰሶና የሰላም መሰረት እንጂ ግጭት ምክንያት አይደለም። እነዚህን የአንድነት የሰላምና የወንድማማችነት እሴቶችን ለመከላከል በሚደረገው የሞሽረት ትግል አብረን እንታገላለን። አምስተኛ ኢትዮጵያን ያጋጠማት መሰረታዊ ችግር ብሔረሰቦችን አፍኖ ጨፍልቆና አንበርክኮ በሃዳዊ ስርዓት ውስጥ የሚገዛ የግለሰባዊ አምባገነን አገዛዝ ለመመስረት እየተደረገ ያለውን ጥረት እንቃወማለን። ስድስተኛ በአገሪቷ ሰላም እንዲኖርና ህዝቦቿ በነጻነት እንዲኖሩ አምባገነናዊው የህብረት ፖለቲካን አስቀምጦ ወደ ሰላማዊ ፖለቲካና ዲሞክራሲያዊ ሽግግር ጎዳና እንዲመለስ እናሳስባለን። ሰባተኛ በፖለቲካ ፓርቲ አባልነታቸው በፖለቲካ አመለካከታቸው በብሔረሰብ ማንነታቸው ምክንያት የታሰሩ በሙሉ ያለምንም ቅድመ ሁኔታ እንዲፈቱ ለደረሰባቸው በደልም መንግስት ካሳ እንዲከፍላቸው እና እንዲወጡ እናሳስባለን፣ እንዲለቀቁ እናሳስባለን። የዓለም አቀፍ ሰላም ፈላጊ ድርጅቶችና መንግስታት የአፍሪካ ህብረት፣ የአውሮፓ ህብረት እና ሌሎችም ለኢትዮጵያ ቀና አመለካከት ያላቸው መንግስታት የተጀመረው ጦርነት ተቀልብሶ በሰላማዊ ንግግር እንዲፈታ ተጽዕኖ እንዲያደርጉና ለሰላም በሚደረግ ጥረት ከጎናችን እንዲሰለፉ ጥሪ እናደርጋለን። ዘጠነኛ በተለያዩ የሀገሪቷ ክፍሎች የተቋቋሙት ኮማንድ ፖስቶች ተነስተው የህዝብ ተቀባይነት ባላቸው የአስተዳደር አካላት እንዲተኩ እንጠይቃለን። የሀገር መከላከያም የግለሰብ ተላላኪ ከመሆን ተላቆ ወደ ቋሚ ህገ መንግስታዊ ተልዕኮ እንዲመለስ ጥሪ እናቀርባለን። አስረኛ ለሀገሪቱ መጠነ ሰፊ ችግሮች መፍትሄ ለማፈላለግ ባለድርሻ ናቸው የሚባሉ የፖለቲካ ኃይሎችን የማህበረሰቡ ተወካዮች የሚሳተፉበት ሀገራዊ ጉባኤ ተጠርቶ ለተከሰቱት ተደራራቢ ቀውሶች መፍትሄ እንዲፈልግ ጥሪ እናቀርባለን። ህዳር 13 2020 ህብር የኢትዮጵያ ብሔራዊ ፌዴራሊስቶች የድጋፍ ኃይል። አመሰግናለሁ።